Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice Podcast channel. Tonight we're stepping into Vienna in the winter of 1900, where snow settles softly on rooftops. Carriage lamps glow through the mist, and the grand capital of an old empire begins to quiet beneath the cold. You stand at the edge of an evening street while flakes turn slowly in the yellow light. Horses breathe pale clouds into the air. Wooden wheels press dark lines into the fresh snow. Somewhere nearby, a door opens, releasing warmth, laughter, and the rich scent of coffee before closing again with a gentle click. The city feels magnificent, but not hurried. Stone buildings rise above you with carved faces, iron balconies, and windows glowing like small amber squares. Vienna is still awake, though it is beginning to loosen its grip on the day. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and tell us where you are listening from, along with your local time. Perhaps it is late beside you, or perhaps morning has found your window already. Now it's time to rest. The snow continues falling as you move deeper into the city. It lands on your coat, gathers along your shoulders, and melts against the warmth near your collar. The cold does not bite sharply tonight. Instead, it settles around you with patient confidence, as though winter has all the time in the world. Vienna in 1900 is the heart of a vast empire. Records confirm that Emperor Franz Joseph has ruled for more than half a century, and his portrait appears in offices, schools, railway stations, and public buildings. His face is familiar even to people who have never seen him in person. He seems less like a man and more like part of the furniture of public life. A permanent figure watching over ledgers, waiting rooms, and official corridors. You pass beneath a street lamp and hear the soft crunch of boots behind you. A clerk walks home with a folded newspaper beneath his arm. His collar is turned up and his hat carries a white rim of snow. He has spent the day copying figures into columns, answering formal letters, and trying not to spill ink on documents that someone important may sign tomorrow. Across the street, two women step carefully from a carriage. Their skirts brush the snow, and a doorman hurries forward with an umbrella, though the snow is falling straight down and seems in no need of being defended against. Respectability, it appears, requires equipment. The air carries many scents at once. Coal smoke drifts from chimneys. Roasted chestnuts warm a metal pan at a street corner. Wet wool, horse leather, and coffee mingle together until the whole city seems to breathe like one enormous winter kitchen. Your eyes rise toward the upper floors. Curtains move faintly. Behind one window, a family is arranging supper. Behind another, a servant shakes dust from a cloth before closing the shutters. Farther up, in a narrow attic room, someone bends over a page beneath weak lamplight, writing words that may never be read. Vienna is famous for elegance, but its comfort is unevenly shared. The broad avenues display statues, fountains, theatres, museums, and government buildings intended to proclaim strength. Yet a short walk away, crowded rooms hold families who measure coal carefully and fear the moment when the stove begins to cool. For now, snow softens those differences from a distance. It rests on palace roofs and workers' window sills with equal calm. It covers fresh carriage tracks and broken paving stones alike. Winter possesses a talent for making inequality look briefly decorative. A bell sounds from somewhere beyond the buildings. Its note travels through the snowy air, deep and rounded, then fades between walls. Another answers farther away. You cannot see the towers clearly, but you can feel the city measuring time around you. Oddly enough, in Vienna often depends on armies of labourers using shovels, carts, and patient horses. There are no clever machines gliding through the night. Instead, men bend their backs beneath coats stiffened by cold, piling snow into wagons that will creak away before dawn. The city may look effortless, but elegance usually requires someone to arrive early with a shovel. A tram moves along the street, its windows bright and briefly inviting. Passengers sit close together, their faces pale behind steamed glass. A conductor steadies himself as the vehicle turns. Sparks flicker overhead, and the sound of metal wheels slips away into the snowfall. You continue on foot. The pavement feels uneven beneath the thin layer of white. Your gloved hand brushes a cold iron railing. It is rough beneath your fingers, damp where the snow has melted. Nearby, a shopkeeper lowers a wooden shutter and secures it with a heavy latch. The sound is firm, final, and satisfying. Not everyone is ready to sleep. Restaurants still serve late meals, theatres are preparing to release their audiences, musicians tune instruments behind closed doors, students argue beneath clouds of smoke, soldiers laugh too loudly near a doorway. A policeman watches them with the tired patience of a man who has seen the same joke performed many times. Scholars still disagree about whether Vienna at the turn of the century should be remembered mainly as a confident imperial capital, or as a society already troubled by deep fractures. Both impressions seem true as you walk. The buildings declare certainty, while the faces beneath them often suggest worry. The empire contains many peoples, languages, customs, and ambitions. Trains arrive daily from distant provinces, carrying officials, merchants, servants, soldiers, and hopeful families. Vienna receives them all. Though not always kindly, it offers opportunity, but also judgment. It welcomes talent, then asks whether that talent has the correct accent, address, clothing, and connections. Snow gathers along the brim of your hat. Ahead, the boulevard opens wider. Carriages pass in both directions, their lamps glowing through the white air. The great buildings appear almost theatrical, as though the city has dressed itself for an audience that may never arrive. Yet the true evening belongs to quieter details. A child presses both hands against a bakery window. A porter stamps his feet beside a hotel entrance. A woman carries a basket beneath a woolen shawl. A dog shakes snow from its back and looks offended by the entire season. You breathe slowly. The cold air feels clean, though the smoke above suggests otherwise. Sound grows softer as the snow thickens. Wheels become muffled. Footsteps lose their sharpness. Even the city bells seem farther away. Vienna does not fall still all at once. It yields gradually. Doorway by doorway, lamp by lamp, conversation by conversation. The imperial capital remains grand, but its grandeur is beginning to drowse. And as you move toward the warmer glow of the coffeehouses, the evening closes gently around you, calm, white, and deep. You step into a coffee house just as the evening begins to thin. Warmth gathers around you at once. Your cheeks sting as they thaw, and the glass in your spectacles, should you be wearing them, would fog with impressive determination. The room carries the dark scent of roasted coffee, tobacco, damp coats, ink, and polished wood. Cups rest on small marble tables. Newspapers hang from wooden holders. Chairs scrape softly across the floor as the last guests prepare to leave. A waiter moves between the tables with the grave expression of a diplomat. His black jacket is neat, his white cloth folded over one arm, and his attention seems capable of noticing everything without appearing to notice anything at all. He knows who has paid, who has not, who is waiting for a friend, and who has been pretending to read the same newspaper for nearly 2 hours. You choose a table near the window. Outside, the snow thickens against the glass. Inside, a lamp shines across the pale surface of the table, turning the rim of your cup into a narrow circle of gold. The coffee arrives dark and fragrant, accompanied by a glass of water placed with almost ceremonial precision. Coffee houses in Vienna serve as much more than places to drink. They are reading rooms, offices, debating halls, shelters, and stages for social performance. Records confirm that many writers, Journalists, artists, lawyers, students, and officials spend long hours in them, sometimes ordering very little while using the tables as temporary workspaces. A cup can purchase not only warmth, but time. You hear the final fragments of several conversations. At one table, two men argue about politics in careful voices. One taps a newspaper with his finger. The other lifts his eyebrows and leans back as though reason itself has become exhausting. Their disagreement seems serious, but neither wishes to spill coffee, so civilization survives. Near the wall, a young poet bends over a notebook. He pauses often, staring in the middle distance with the solemn expression of someone waiting for inspiration to arrive by carriage. A few lines appear on the page, then he crosses them out. The paper is already crowded with disappointment. A merchant checks figures in a small ledger. His lips move silently as he adds columns. Beside him, an older gentleman reads news from across the empire, shifting from one page to another with a faint rustle. He holds the paper wide, creating a private wall around himself. You let the room settle into your hearing. Spoons touch porcelain. A chair leg drags across tile. The stove gives a low metal sigh. Somewhere behind a partition, dishes are stacked. The sounds are ordinary, but together they create a gentle machinery of habit. The waiter approaches a table occupied by 3 students. Their cups are empty, their ashtray is full, their opinions remain abundant. He asks whether they would care for anything else. They glance at one another. One orders another glass of water. The waiter accepts this insult with professional dignity. Oddly enough, a guest may remain for hours over a single cup, provided he behaves with enough confidence. The coffee house offers a kind of rented belonging. You need not own an elegant room, subscribe to every newspaper, or keep a private servant for the price of one drink. You may briefly borrow the appearance of a cultivated life. The final newspapers of the night are folded and returned to their racks. Their pages contain parliamentary disputes, market reports, theatre announcements, military notices, and distant troubles translated into neat columns. The world appears manageable when arranged in print. A man near the door reads aloud a small item to his companion. The companion laughs once, sharply, then lowers his voice when the waiter looks over. Humour remains welcome, provided it does not disturb the furniture. You lift the cup. The coffee is strong, slightly bitter, and deeply warming. Heat spreads through your hands. The glass of water waits beside it, clear and still. There is comfort in the arrangement, in the small balance between darkness and clarity. At another table, a journalist gathers loose papers. His fingers are stained with ink. He checks each page twice, as though one might escape. His work will continue elsewhere, perhaps in a rented room where the stove burns poorly and the neighbours speak too loudly. Here, he has enjoyed light, warmth, and the possibility that someone important might overhear him. The door opens. A gust of cold air moves through the room. Several heads turn at once. A woman enters with snow caught in the fur trim of her coat. She shakes her umbrella, apologizes, and joins a companion who has been waiting near the stove. Their conversation begins in whispers, then rises into quiet laughter. The coffee house is public, but privacy survives in small pockets. A lowered voice, a raised newspaper, a chosen corner, a pause before answering. Secrets do not require silence, they require only enough surrounding noise. Scholars bicker over whether these coffee houses truly welcome broad social exchange or whether their famous openness has been romanticised. The rooms certainly bring different occupations into close contact, but rank, wealth, religion, gender, and reputation still shape who feels at ease. A city may call a space public while quietly deciding who belongs there. You notice that most of the late guests are men. Women do enter some coffee houses, especially with companions. Yet many rooms still carry rules that need never be written because everyone already understands them. The Empire thrives on such invisible arrangements. The hour advances. Waiters begin removing unused chairs. Tablecloths are straightened. Lamps are lowered one by one. The room does not empty suddenly. It contracts. The students finally stand, arguing about who will pay. The poet closes his notebook with no visible triumph. The merchant wraps a scarf around his neck. The older gentleman folds his newspaper into a narrow rectangle and tucks it beneath his arm. Each departure changes the sound. The room grows larger around you. A server wipes the table beside yours in slow circles. Another carries a tray of cups toward the back. A clock above the doorway marks the minutes with delicate, patient clicks. You finish the coffee. The last warmth remains in the porcelain. Outside, the windows show only drifting white and the blurred glow of street lamps. The city beyond feels distant, almost imagined. The waiter brings the bill on a small tray. His expression is courteous, but the message is clear. History, poetry, politics, commerce, and philosophy must now put on their coats. Fabric rustles, gloves are pulled tight, hats are settled. The door opens once more, and the cold enters like an uninvited official. Behind you, chairs are turned upon to tables. The stove dims, the newspaper racks stand empty and straight. One lamp remains near the counter, casting a final pool of light across the polished floor. Then the door closes, and the coffee house falls silent. You emerge onto a broad avenue where the snow lies smooth between wheel tracks, and the city seems to stand at attention beneath the winter scar. The buildings along the street rise with deliberate confidence. Their stone fronts carry columns, carved wreaths, heroic figures, and balconies made for appearances. Nothing here is modest by accident. Every facade announces that Vienna is not merely a city, but the centre of an empire that expects to be admired. Your boots press into fresh snow as you pass a government office. Two guards stand near the entrance beneath heavy coats, their posture stiff despite the cold. Brass buttons catch the lamplight. Their breath appears in small clouds, then vanishes. They seem carved into the doorway, except for the occasional movement of a gloved hand. The Habsburg monarchy shapes nearly every visible part of public life. Records confirm that Emperor Franz Joseph rules over lands stretching across much of Central and Eastern Europe, governing millions of people from many cultural and religious backgrounds. His authority rests on ceremony, administration, military loyalty, and the ancient weight of dynasty. You sense that weight in the architecture. A double-headed eagle appears above a doorway. Imperial colours decorate an official carriage. A uniformed messenger hurries past with a leather case held close to his side. Even the street signs seem to speak in a formal tone, as though careless behaviour might be reported to a minstrel. A group of officers leaves a restaurant nearby. Their boots shine, their swords hang at their sides, more decorative than practical on a snowy evening. But decoration is part of the purpose. They laugh among themselves with the easy confidence of men who know a uniform opens doors. One officer pauses to light a cigarette. Another complains about the cold. The Empire may possess a grand destiny, but its representatives still have wet socks. You continue beneath rows of bare trees. The Ringstrasse presents Vienna as a capital of order and culture. Parliament, museums, theatres, the university, and the city hall stand along this grand route, each building borrowing styles from admired periods of the past. The result is magnificent, though slightly theatrical. It is as if the city has opened an enormous costume wardrobe and selected every outfit at once. You pass a carriage carrying a senior official. Curtains cover the windows, but you glimpse a pale face within. A footman sits outside, enduring the weather, so that someone inside may avoid it. Rank travels warmly. Social position is visible everywhere. A title affects how you are addressed. A uniform determines who steps aside. A family name can open a salon, secure an appointment, or rescue a dull young man from the consequences of being dull. People learn to read these signals as naturally as they read the time. A woman in a dark coat waits at a crossing with her maid. The maid holds several parcels and stands half a step behind. Both women are cold, but only one is expected to show it. The avenue fills briefly with the sound of marching feet. A small military patrol moves past, their rhythm softened by the snow. Vienna is not a battlefield, yet military presence remains woven into daily life. Barracks, drills, parades, and uniforms remind citizens that the empire depends upon obedience as much as elegance. A curious footnote concerns court etiquette. At formal events, strict rules govern where people stand, how deeply they bow, and who may speak first. An incorrect gesture can become a social disaster, though probably not a military one. Still, in a world where status is carefully measured, a badly timed bow may feel like an invasion. You turn toward a square where a statue rises above the snowfall. The bronze figure sits high on horseback, calm and commanding, while pigeons sleep in sheltered corners of the monument. Imperial glory looks impressive from below, looks less impressive when covered by birds, but history rarely includes that detail in official paintings. The square opens around you, framed by offices and residences. Several windows remain lit. Clerks work late inside, processing reports from distant provinces. Papers move through ministries in endless streams. Tax records, military orders, railway plans, petitions, and complaints pass from desk to desk under the watch of tired men with stiff collars. This bureaucracy helps hold the empire together. Decisions made in Vienna can affect villages hundreds of miles away. A signature may determine a railway route, a school policy, or a military appointment. Yet the machinery is slow, documents wait for approval, officials protect their authority, departments exchange formal letters about matters that might have been solved by walking across a corridor. You hear a carriage approach from behind and step aside. Its wheels cut through the snow. The driver sits wrapped in blankets, his hat low over his ears. Inside, two men speak intensely. Their faces appear and disappear behind frost on the glass. Perhaps they discuss finance, perhaps diplomacy, perhaps dinner in Vienna. All three can sound equally serious. Arguments split along whether the empire still possesses the strength to adapt or whether its magnificent ceremonies conceal growing weakness. Some observers see stability in its institutions and loyalty to the emperor. Others point to rising nationalism, social division, and political frustration among the many peoples under Habsburg rule. You feel both possibilities around you. The city appears secure, guards stand at doors, officials move with purpose. Carriages carry important people through ordered streets, yet beneath that surface, many citizens question who holds power and whose interests are protected. Workers demand better conditions. National groups seek recognition. Middle-class voters want influence. Aristocrats defend inherited privilege. The imperial system attempts to balance them all. Rather like a waiter carrying too many cups across a crowded room, a distant trumpet sounds from a military building. The note is clear, lonely, and brief. You pause beside an iron fence. Cold metal presses through your glove. Beyond it stands a palace courtyard. Pale beneath the snow, lamps burn near the entrance, and a sentry walks a measured path from one post to another. The grandeur is undeniable, so is the distance between those who command and those who obey. You move on beneath the imperial symbols, listening to the quiet rhythm of patrols, horses, and office clocks. Vienna carries the Habsburg crown with practiced dignity. Though the weight of it presses upon every street, you leave the grand avenues and follow the quieter current of people making their way home. The streets narrow by degrees. Monumental stone gives way to smaller shop fronts, modest inns, workshops, and apartment buildings gathered around inner courtyards. The snow still falls, but the mood changes. Here, The city feels less like an imperial performance and more like a collection of tired lives returning to their rooms. A clerk walks several paces ahead of you, carrying a leather case under one arm. His coat is carefully brushed, though the cuffs show wear. He moves with the determined speed of someone who hopes to reach supper before it grows cold at each corner. He glances at the street signs, not because he is lost, but because habit likes reassurance. Behind him comes a seamstress with a bundle wrapped in brown paper. Needles, thread, and unfinished fabric have occupied her eyes all day. Her shoulders lean slightly forward, shaped by long hours over a table. She pauses beneath a lamp to adjust the bundle, then continues without complaint. You hear the ring of a small handbell. A tram approaches along the tracks, crowded with workers, shop assistants, and students. Its interior glows with weak yellow light. Faces appear behind clouded windows, close together yet private. Some passengers stare at nothing. Others read folded newspapers. One man sleeps upright, waking each time the carriage jolts, then surrendering again. Public transport has become essential to Vienna's growth. Records confirm that expanding tram lines help connect the central districts with outer neighbourhoods, allowing more people to live farther from their workplaces. The city stretches outward, and daily life begins to depend on timetables, tickets, and the patience required to stand beside strangers in wet coats. You do not board. Instead, you follow a delivery boy pushing a bicycle through the snow. Riding would be faster in theory, but theory has not met these streets tonight. The tyres slip, the front wheel catches in ruts, and the boy mutters at the machine with the intimacy of an old enemy. A market street lies ahead, nearly closed for the night. Vendors pull canvas over stalls. Wooden crates are stacked against walls. The scent of cabbage, apples, onions, and damp straw lingers in the cold. A woman counts the last coins in her apron pocket while her husband loads an empty basket onto a cart. Their day has been measured in small purchases and smaller profits. A curious footnote appears in the way many Viennese households manage evening shopping. Food is often bought in modest quantities because storage is limited and refrigeration is rare. This means more frequent trips to markets and shops, which is charming only to people who have never carried potatoes through a snowstorm. You pass a bakery where the front room is dark, though work continues behind it. Flour dust clings to the lower window panes. A faint warmth leaks through the doorframe. The night shift has begun preparing bread for customers who will wake believing breakfast somehow appears by itself. Farther along, a civil servant removes his hat to greet an older neighbour. Their exchange is brief and formal. Good evening. Cold weather? Yes. Very cold. The Empire survives another conversation. A pair of factory workers turns into a side street. Their boots are heavy with slush, and one carries a metal lunch container. They speak little. Fatigue has reduced language to nods and short remarks. Their route leads towards a district where rents are lower. Rooms are smaller, and several families may share a single water source. You feel the pavement change beneath your feet. The elegant central streets are better maintained, while these lanes dip and rise unpredictably. Meltwater gathers in shallow hollows. Snow hides broken stones. You place each step carefully, aware that winter has no respect for polished shoes. At a doorway, a porter stands beneath a hanging lamp. He recognizes residents by face, voice, and footstep. He knows which tenant pays late, which child sneaks in after dark, and which visitor should not be announced too loudly. His official task is to watch the building, but his true occupation is collecting the quiet history of everyone inside. The door opens, revealing a passage into a courtyard. You glimpse laundry lines, wooden balconies, storage sheds, and rows of windows facing inward. Voices rise from several floors. A baby cries. Someone practices scales on a violin. A pot lid falls with a sharp clang, followed by silence and then laughter. Vienna's residential courtyards create small worlds hidden behind street facades. From the road, a building may appear orderly and respectable. Within, dozens of households share noise, smells, gossip, and limited space of privacy exists, but it must negotiate with thin walls. No agreement has been reached on whether the rapid expansion of Vienna improves life more through opportunity or worsens it through overcrowding. New jobs, transport, schools, and markets attract thousands, yet housing construction often struggles to keep pace, leaving many residents in cramped rooms with poor ventilation and inadequate sanitation. You continue toward an outer neighborhood. The crowd separates according to income almost without instruction. A lawyer steps into a hired carriage. A shop assistant waits for the next tram. A maid walks another mile because the fare matters. Each person travels through the same snow, but comfort is distributed with remarkable precision. At a corner tavern, light spills across the pavement. Men stand near the counter inside, warming their hands around glasses and discussing wages. Their coats hang from pegs, dripping steadily onto the floor. A card game is underway at the back. One player studies his hand with greater concentration than many ministers bring to public affairs. Across from the tavern, a music teacher climbs a staircase carrying a worn case. She has spent the afternoon instructing children from respectable families, repeating the same scales while parents listened from adjoining rooms. Now she returns to an apartment where her own piano may be too expensive to heat. A servant girl hurries past you with bread tucked beneath her shawl. She has completed errands for the household where she works and is not yet free to rest. Her shoes are thin, her steps are quick. She disappears through a service entrance rather than the brighter front door. The city reveals itself through such entrances. Front doors receive guests, side doors admit deliveries, rear stairs carry servants, courtyard gates swallow workers. Architecture quietly explains who may be seen and who should remain useful but unnoticed. You turn into a lane where the lamps stand farther apart. Their glow falls in separate circles, leaving stretches of blue darkness between them. Snow gathers on window ledges. Curtains are drawn. A few silhouettes move behind the glass, bending towards stoves, tables, and children. The sound of the centre has faded. Here, you hear domestic noises, a latch lifting, water poured into a basin, coal shifted with a metal poker, boots placed beside a door, someone coughing in an upstairs room, someone singing very softly while folding clothes. Every doorway receives a different evening. Some open, on to polished halls and warm carpets. Others lead to narrow rooms where beds are shared and coats remain on indoors. Some residents return to servants and supper. Others return to unpaid bills, restless children, and a stove that must be persuaded to burn. You keep walking as the snowfall thickens, passing one household after another, each hidden behind plaster, brick, and glass. The capital no longer looks like a single city. It becomes thousands of private worlds stacked closely together, settling into the cold. You enter an apartment building where the front door closes with a heavy wooden thud, shutting out the wind but not entirely the cold. The entrance hall smells of wet wool, coal dust, furniture polish, and cooked onions drifting from somewhere above. A weak lamp hangs from the ceiling. Its light touches the stone floor. The curved staircase and a row of brass nameplates fixed beside several doors. The building appears respectable from the street, yet its interior contains many different measures of comfort. You climb slowly. On the first floor, thick carpets cover the corridor. A polished door stands beneath a decorative frame. When it opens, warmth reaches the landing at once. A maid receives a guest, takes his coat, and disappears toward a room bright with lamps. You glimpse high ceilings, framed paintings, upholstered chairs, and a tiled stove large enough to heat several rooms. Curtains hang heavily across the windows, protecting the interior from drafts. A clock ticks above a marble mantel. Porcelain figures stand nearby, looking far too delicate to understand winter. The family living here can afford coal in generous amounts. Their rooms are separated by purpose. There is a dining room for eating, a sitting room for receiving visitors, bedrooms for sleeping, and perhaps a study where the master of the household may close a door and consider himself very busy. Records confirm that prosperous Viennese households often occupied spacious apartments with formal reception rooms facing the street, while kitchens and servants' quarters were placed farther back. The arrangement turned domestic life into a quiet map of rank. The finest light and largest windows belong to those with the greatest social standing. You continue upward. The second floor feels less grand, though still comfortable. The carpet is thinner, the walls show marks where furniture has brushed against them. A schoolteacher lives behind one door with his wife and 2 children. Their apartment contains fewer rooms, and one chamber serves several purposes depending on the hour. A table used for breakfast becomes a place for lessons, sewing, letter writing, and evening meals. Beds may be folded or screened from view when visitors arrive. Respectability requires careful arrangement, especially when space refuses to cooperate. Inside, the teacher's wife adds a small piece of coal to the stove. She watches the flame closely. Fuel is expensive, and heat must be managed with judgment. The room is warm near the stove and noticeably cooler near the windows. Everyone understands where the best chair stands. A child presses a finger against the frost forming on the glass. The mother tells him not to draw pictures in it. He waits until she turns away and draws one anyway. Civilization advances through such rebellion. Higher still, the staircase narrows. The air becomes colder. Plaster has cracked near the ceiling. The rail feels rough beneath your palm. Here, several families rent small rooms facing the courtyard rather than the street. Their windows receive little direct light, and the walls hold dampness through much of winter. One household occupies a single room with a small cooking stove, 2 beds, a table, and several chairs. 5 people live there. At night, every piece of furniture must become useful. A bench may serve as a bed. A trunk may become a seat. Clothes hang from hooks because there is no wardrobe. Blankets are layered carefully, and coats remain within reach. Privacy is not a room. It is a curtain, a lowered voice, or the courtesy of looking away. Oddly enough, some tenants take in lodgers who rent a bed for part of the day or night. When work shifts do not overlap, one person may sleep as another rises. A bed can become a small business, which is practical in the same way that sharing a toothbrush would be practical, meaning not very comforting at all. You hear water splashing in the corridor. A woman carries a filled basin from a shared tap. She walks carefully, avoiding the uneven floorboards. Her sleeves are rolled above the wrists, and steam rises faintly from the water. Several households depend upon the same source, which means washing and cooking and cleaning require patience as well as effort. Sanitation differs greatly from building to building. Wealthier homes may have private washing facilities, while poorer tenants rely on shared toilets and water points outside their rooms. In freezing weather, every ordinary task becomes slower and less pleasant. The woman sets down the basin and rubs her fingers together. Her hands are red from cold. A child opens the door for her. Warm air does not escape because there is very little warm air to lose. You step into an attic corridor beneath the sloping roof. Snow taps softly against the tiles overhead. The ceiling is low, and the cold feels closer here, as though the night has pressed its face against the building. A labourer sits near a small stove that gives more smoke than heat. His boots are placed beside it to dry. They will still be damp by morning. His wife mends a sleeve beneath an oil lamp. Each stitch is small and exact. 2 children sleep together under one blanket. Their breathing is steady. A pot rests on the stove, holding the remains of supper for the labourer who has returned late. Nothing in the room is wasted. Old newspapers line a gap near the window. A broken chair has been repaired with cord. A wooden crate stores potatoes. A chipped cup remains useful because the handle still holds. Poverty develops its own strict talent for prolonging the life of objects. Arguments remain divided over how much Vienna's housing crisis is caused by rapid population growth and how much by policies that favour property owners and profitable rents. What is clear is that overcrowding places the greatest burden on those with the least power to escape it. You feel the contrast within the same walls below. A family sleeps beneath feather blankets in heated rooms. Above, another family calculates whether the coal must last 3 days or 4. One household complains that the servant has allowed a draft. Another stuffs cloth into a window frame because the wind moves the flame of the lamp. The building itself becomes a vertical social order. Street-facing rooms offer light and status. Courtyard rooms offer less of both. Lower floors provide easier access and greater prestige. Attics demand more climbing and receive more cold. Every staircase quietly sorts lives by income. A door opens below, and laughter rises through the stairwell. Somewhere else, a baby begins to cry. Pipes knock within the walls. A stove door closes. The sounds travel upward and downward, crossing boundaries that society tries to keep firm. You pause beside a small attic window. Outside, snow covers the rooftops. Chimneys send dark smoke into the pale night. From this height, the city seems calm and equal. Every roof carries the same white weight. Inside, winter remains selective. It enters through damaged frames, thin walls, empty coal bins, and worn blankets. It lingers longest where money is shortest. Yet even here, people create warmth from soup, shared stories, repaired clothing, and the closeness of sleeping bodies. The lamp is lowered, the room darkens. Beyond the glass, the snow continues to fall upon apartments of velvet and bare boards alike, while every household prepares to endure the same night by very different means. You sit near a kitchen stove while supper gathers itself from simple ingredients. The room is small, but it has become the centre of the household. Heat rises from iron plates. A kettle trembles faintly. Steam clouds the nearest window, softening the snow outside into a pale blur. The table has been scrubbed clean, though years of use remain visible in cuts, stains, and shallow dents. A woman lifts the lid from a pot. The scent of cabbage, onions, and broth fills the room. It is not a luxurious meal, yet it arrives with the quiet importance of something earned. Everyone has waited for it. Everyone knows how far the ingredients must stretch. You hear spoons placed beside bowls. A loaf of dark bread rests on a wooden board. Its crust is firm. A knife passes through it with a slow, soaring sound. The slices are cut carefully, neither generous nor mean, because tomorrow also expects breakfast. In many Viennese homes, supper is the warmest and most reliable pause of the day. Records confirm that working families often depend on filling foods such as bread, potatoes, cabbage, dumplings, and soup, while meat appears less frequently for those with limited means. The meal must satisfy hunger without exhausting the household purse. You settle on a plain chair. The stove gives a low crack as a piece of coal shifts inside. Its heat touches one side of your face while the other remains cool. Everyone sits close enough to benefit from it. Distance from the stove is a form of wealth that few people in this room can afford. The father removes his jacket and hangs it on a peg. His shirt carries the dust of work. He rubs his hands together, then holds them near the iron door. The mother serves the children first, though she pretends not to notice that her own portion is smaller. No one begins with ceremony. The first spoonfuls are taken quickly. Hunger has little interest in elegance. The soup is thickened with vegetables and perhaps a little flour. A bone may have flavoured the pot earlier, though it has already been removed and saved for one final use. Each bowl receives careful attention. Bread is dipped into the broth, absorbing warmth and taste. Conversation begins only after the first urgency has passed. A child describes a quarrel from school. An older sister corrects him. The father asks whether coal has been delivered. The mother says the price has risen again. Everyone pauses, because this is not merely information, it is a warning. Fuel competes with food in the winter budget. More coal means less money for meat, candles, repairs, or medicine. Less coal means colder rooms, slower cooking, and damp clothes that never quite dry. You feel the calculation hanging above the table. A candle burns near the wall, but the stove provides most of the light. Its fire glows through narrow openings, red and steady. Shadows move across faces as people lean forward and back. In a wealthier home, supper unfolds differently. You imagine a dining room where several courses arrive one after another. White cloth covers the table. Silverware is arranged according to rules that seem designed to test the nervous. Soup comes first, followed by fish or meat, vegetables, pastries, and wine. A servant enters at the correct moment and leaves before anyone can wonder where the plates go. Yet even there, the kitchen remains the true engine of the meal. Cooks work beside hot ranges, carrying heavy pots and keeping strict track of timing. Kitchen maids scrub pans, peel vegetables, pluck birds, and fetch water. The dining room receives the performance. The kitchen survives the rehearsal. One scandalous aside concerns the way fashionable households sometimes judge a cook by the lightness of dumplings or pastry. A single heavy dish can damage a servant's reputation, which is rather dramatic when you consider that the evidence disappears into hungry guests within minutes. Back in the smaller room, the meal changes shape as the bowls empty. A jar of preserved fruit is opened. Only a spoonful is given to each child. The sweetness is bright and brief. It recalls summer gardens, market stalls, and warmer air. For a moment, the snow beyond the window feels less powerful. You listen to the scrape of spoons against pottery. The dishes do not match. One bowl carries a crack repaired with care. Another has lost part of its painted rim. A tin cup sits beside a ceramic one. Nothing needs to look perfect in order to be useful. The mother rises to add water to the pot. What remains may become tomorrow's soup. A few potatoes, another onion, and a little salt can persuade the meal to continue. Household cooking depends not only on recipes, but on judgment, memory, and the ability to make scarcity seem intentional. Researchers continue to dispute whether urban diets in this period improved steadily with rising trade and transport, or remained dangerously poor for many labouring families. Markets offer greater variety than earlier generations knew, yet access depends upon wages, prices, storage, and the health of the person preparing the food. You notice how much labour hides inside one bowl. Someone bought the vegetables, someone carried them home, someone cleaned them, cut them, watched the fire, saved the scraps, served the portions, and will wash the dishes. Supper may last half an hour. Preparing it can consume much of the evening. The kettle begins to sing. Hot water is poured into cups with a small amount of tea or a roasted grain drink. The taste is mild, but the warmth matters more. Hands wrap around the cups, shoulders lower, the room grows quieter. A grandfather seated near the stove tells a brief story about a winter from his youth. He claims the snow once reached the windows. The children doubt this, but politely allow the old man his private mountain range. The father cuts the final piece of bread in two. One half goes to the youngest child, the other is wrapped in cloth for mourning. The board is wiped clean with a finger, then with a damp rag. Crumbs are gathered rather than brushed to the floor. You hear the practical sounds of the meal ending. Water splashes into a basin. Bowls are stacked. A spoon slips and rings against the table. The stove door opens once more, releasing a stronger pulse of heat. A small piece of coal is added, then the door shuts firmly. The room changes from dining place to sleeping place. A chair is moved aside, bedding is unfolded. Clothes are hung near the stove, though not close enough to scorch. The candle is trimmed, its flame steadies. The last scent of supper remains in the air, mixed with soap, coal, and warm bread. You stay beside the stove as the family settles. Hunger has been quieted. The dishes are clean. The remaining food has been sieved. Outside, the night presses against the windows, but inside, the iron stove holds a red heart of heat. For now, that is enough. You remain awake while the household grows quiet, and the servants begin the final work of the day. A clock in the passage marks the hour with a soft metallic chime. Doors close up airs, voices become muffled. The family withdraws toward heated bedrooms, leaving behind half-empty glasses, scattered cushions, candle stubs, and the faint disorder created by comfort. In the kitchen, no one is resting yet. The cook stands beside a long wooden table, wrapping leftovers and checking jars. Her sleeves are rolled above strong forearms. Heat from the range has reddened her face, though cold air slips through the service door each time it opens. She counts tomorrow's eggs, measures flour, and inspects a joint of meat hanging in the pantry. Nothing escapes her attention. A kitchen maid lowers a heavy pot into a basin. Water strikes iron with a hollow splash. Grease clings stubbornly to the sides, so she scrubs with sand and a rough cloth. Her fingers are sore, and one knuckle has split in the dry winter air. She works without gloves because gloves would be useless, and servants are expected to possess hands that somehow resist damage. Records confirm that domestic service is one of the largest forms of employment for young women in cities such as Vienna. Many servants come from rural districts, entering unfamiliar households where they live under strict rules and remain dependent upon their employers for wages, lodging, and references. You hear the faint squeak of shoes in the corridor. A housemaid carries a lamp from room to room. She gathers cups, straightens chairs, closes curtains, and checks the tiled stoves. Her steps are careful because a servant who works loudly is judged careless, while a servant who works invisibly is considered excellent. She enters the drawing room. The fire has burned low. A book lies open on a small table, abandoned face down. The maid lifts it, marks the page with a ribbon, and returns it to the shelf. She empties an ashtray, brushes crumbs from the carpet, and retrieves a glove left beneath a chair. The glove belongs to a guest. She places it near the entrance, where it may be discovered in the morning and treated as a charming mystery rather than evidence that someone could not keep track of clothing. In the dining room, another servant counts the silver. Forks, spoons, serving pieces, and knives are arranged in rows. Each object must be present. Silver has value, and suspicion usually travels downward through the social order. A missing spoon rarely causes the master of the house to search his own pockets. The footman checks the shutters and tests the locks. He is tall, neatly dressed, and expected to look impressive when guests arrive. At this hour, his collar is loosened, and the dignity of his uniform has begun to collapse around the shoulders. He carries coal upstairs in a metal scuttle. The load is awkward. Fine black dust settles along his cuffs. He enters a bedroom where the occupants are already beneath blankets and adds fuel to the stove without drawing attention. Warmth must appear as naturally as wealth itself. Oddly enough, some employers require servants to answer bells from several rooms, each bell producing a different sound in the service area. A servant must learn which ring belongs to the dining room, the bedroom, or the front entrance. The household becomes a small orchestra in which every note means someone else must hurry. A bell trembles on the wall. The housemaid pauses. It rings again. She leaves the tray she is carrying and climbs the back staircase. The steps are steep and uncarpeted. At the top, a bedroom door opens only a few inches. A sleepy voice asks for more hot water. The request is not urgent. That does not make it optional. You follow her downward as she fills a jug, tests the temperature, wraps it in cloth, and climbs once more. By the time she returns, the water in the washing basin has cooled and the kitchen maid is still fighting the same pot. Domestic servants often work from early morning until late at night. Their hours are shaped not by clocks alone, but by the needs and habits of the people they serve. A dinner party, illness, visiting relative, or forgotten errand can stretch the day without increasing the wage. The cook finally covers the range. She checks the oven door, the coal box, and the pantry latch. Food must be protected from mice, waste, and unauthorized hunger. In some houses, servants are watched closely when they eat, as though a second helping might threaten the family fortune. Scholars remain divided over whether domestic service offered young women valuable independence or merely transferred them from parental authority into another strict hierarchy. Wages could provide opportunity, and city life could widen experience, yet isolation, vulnerability, and exhausting labour were common. You see that tension in the maid's small attic room. It lies beneath the roof, far from the decorated chambers below. The ceiling slopes sharply over a narrow bed. A washstand occupies one corner. A wooden box holds her possessions. There is no stove, only warmth drifting weakly through the floorboards and whatever heat her blanket can preserve. She lights a short candle. From her pocket, she removes a folded letter from home. The paper has been read many times. Its creases have softened, and one corner is stained. She reads slowly, moving her lips over familiar sentences about parents, harvests, neighbours, and a younger brother who asks when she will visit. Her wages may help that household. Perhaps she sends money each month. Perhaps she saves towards a marriage, training, or a room of her own. Perhaps she simply hopes to endure until a better position appears. Below, the porter completes his rounds. He walks through the entrance hall with a ring of keys. He secures the courtyard gate, checks the cellar, and listens beside the main door. Snow brushes against the outer steps. The street has quieted, but a late carriage may still arrive, and respectable households dislike being left outside. The porter knows that his rest can be interrupted by any returning resident. He keeps a coat near his chair and a lamp ready. His room stands close to the entrance, convenient for everyone except himself. In the kitchen, the final dish is dried. The maid hangs the cloth, empties the basin, and rubs her aching wrists. Ashes are swept from beneath the range. Scraps are placed in a covered container. Knives are stored. The lamp is turned low. One by one, the servants climb separate stairs toward narrow rooms. Their labour has cleaned away the evidence of the evening. By morning, fires will be lit, water heated, shoes polished, and breakfast prepared. The household will wake to order and may never consider how recently that order was created. You listen as the last service door closes. The building settles around exhausted bodies. Floorboards cool, pipes murmur. A bell remains silent on the wall. For a few precious hours, no one calls or... You hear the final notes of a piano drift through heavy curtains and settle softly into the snow. The sound comes from an upper room where several guests remain gathered around a polished instrument. Candles glow in silver holders. Their flames tremble whenever someone crosses the room. Wax smoke mingles with perfume, warm fabric, and the faint scent of winter air slipping through the window frames. A young woman sits at the piano. Her hands move lightly across the keys. The melody is gentle now, chosen for the closing hour rather than display. Earlier, she may have performed something difficult enough to impress the room. Now she plays more slowly, allowing the music to lose its sharp edges. You stand near the doorway and listen. A gentleman beside the stove closes his eyes as though privately responsible for understanding every note. Another guest watches the pianist with careful admiration. Two women on a sofa exchange a quiet remark behind their fans. Their whisper lasts only a moment, but their expressions suggest a complete review of the evening. Music belongs deeply to Vienna's public image and private life. Records confirm that the city supports major opera houses, concert halls, military bands, church choirs, dance orchestras, music teachers, and countless amateur performers. A respectable household may consider musical training almost as important as good manners, though both can be tested severely by a child practicing scales. The pianist reaches the final chord. No one moves until the sound fades. Then, applause rises, warm but restrained. The young woman smiles, lowers her eyes, and turns slightly from the keyboard. Compliments follow at once. Her touch was delicate. Her timing was excellent. The room was transported. No one mentions the missed note. That is kindness or diplomacy, which often wears the same coat. A man carrying a violin case prepares to leave. He has accompanied several songs and now rubs his fingers together near the fire. The instrument must be protected from damp air and sudden changes in temperature. He wraps the case in cloth before fastening the clasps. Outside, snow can damage more than those shoes. You move into another room where a gramophone stands on a table. Such machines are still novelties in many homes, and recorded sound seems almost magical. A voice or orchestra can be captured and summoned again, though the result may emerge with a scratchy texture, as if every singer has been placed behind a curtain of dry leaves. Oddly enough, some listeners distrust recorded music because it separates sound from the living performer. A voice without a visible body can feel uncanny. Others delight in the machine precisely because it allows a performance to return on command, a useful improvement over relatives who sing whenever they please. The horn of the gramophone gleams beneath lamplight. A guest suggests playing one more record. The hostess declines with a smile that is both gracious and final. Coats are brought from the hall, gloves are matched, scarves are tightened, invitations are vaguely promised. Someone says the evening has passed too quickly, though everyone has been checking the clock for the last half hour. You follow the departing guest down the stairs. From a nearby theatre, a larger crowd spills into the night. The performance has ended, and the audience emerges beneath the canopy in waves of dark coats, bright gowns, polished hats, and raised collars. Carriage drivers call to one another. Footmen search for their employers. Snow gathers on shoulders before attendants can open umbrellas. The theatre doors release warmth, chatter, and the lingering energy of applause. A woman hums a melody from the performance. Her companion corrects the tune. She ignores him and continues exactly as before. Vienna's stages offer opera, drama, comedy, popular songs, and light musical entertainment. Audiences attend not only to hear and see, but also to be seen. A fashionable appearance in a theatre box can communicate rank, taste, wealth, and social connection without requiring anyone to endure an actual conversation. You glance upward toward the illuminated boxes. Their red velvet curtains are being drawn. Ushers inspect rows of empty seats. Programs lie folded on the floor. A forgotten glove rests beneath a chair. Stagehands move behind the scenery, extinguishing lamps and securing painted backdrops. The illusion is being packed away. A palace, forest, or village street that seemed convincing, under theatrical light becomes wood, canvas, rope, and labour. Performers remove costumes in cramped dressing rooms. Powder is wiped from faces. Wigs are placed on stands. A heroic prince complains about cold water. Scholars continue to debate whether Vienna's celebrated musical culture truly crossed social boundaries or mainly reinforced them. Cheap performances, military bands, church music, and popular songs reach broad audiences, yet elite concerts, private lessons, and prestigious seats remain shaped by money, education, and the status. You hear music from a very different setting. In a modest tavern, a small group plays for workers and late customers. The room is crowded and warm. A violin leads a lively tune while a stringed instrument keeps the rhythm. Boots tap beneath tables. Someone sings with confidence and only partial accuracy. The players watch the room carefully. They know when to increase the pace, when to soften the sound, and when a familiar melody may encourage another round of drinks. Their work depends upon attention as much as talent. A musician who ignores the audience may create art, but a musician who understands the audience may eat tomorrow. As you remain near the door, the floor vibrates faintly beneath your feet. Glasses touch. A chair creaks. Laughter rises and then falls. The music carries warmth into the room, turning fatigue into motion for a little while. Soon the landlord lifts a hand. The players finish with a final flourish. Coins are gathered. Instruments are wiped and placed in cases. Customers button their coats reluctantly. The door opens and the night receives them. Across the district, musical sounds vanish one by one. A student closes the lid of an upright piano. A child is told to stop practicing. A singer drinks warm water and wraps a scarf around her throat. A church organ stands silent beneath dark arches. A theatre orchestra packs away its bows and reeds. Even the city's bar of music must eventually yield to sleep. You walk beneath windows now hidden by curtains. Behind one, a final chord is tested softly, almost too quiet to hear. The player pauses, repeats it, and lets the note fade without resolution. Snow absorbs the remaining sound. The streets grow hushed, and Vienna's melodies retreat into memory, where they continue without instruments, without applause, and without any need to remain awake. You step onto the Ringstrasse as the last theatre crowds dissolve into side streets and waiting carriages. The boulevard stretches around the old centre in a grand curve, broad enough to make every traveller feel slightly smaller than intended. Snow lies across the roadway in pale bands. Lamps form a long chain of yellow light, each one surrounded by a faint halo. Beyond them, monumental buildings stand in solemn rows, their carved walls softened by frost. Your footsteps sound unusually clear. The usual movement has thinned. A carriage passes, then another, but long spaces of quiet open between them. Hooves strike the frozen ground with a measured rhythm. Wheels grind through slush near the curb. Each vehicle appears briefly beneath the lamps, carries its passengers onward, and disappears into the white air. The Ringstrasse is one of Vienna's most ambitious urban projects. Official records confirm that Emperor Franz Joseph ordered the removal of the old city walls in the middle of the 19th century, allowing a modern boulevard and a series of major public buildings to rise in their place. Fortifications once meant to resist attack gave way to museums, theatres, government offices, gardens, and private palaces. You pass the Opera House. Its entrance lamps are being extinguished one by one. Workers sweep steps where elegant shoes recently crossed. A porter bends to collect a dropped programme, now damp at the edges. Posters announce performances in bold lettering, promising passion, tragedy, and perfect singing on another evening. The building itself seems to be a saint. Statues along the facade wear small caps of snow. Columns hold a darkness between them. High windows reflect the lamps rather than revealing anything within. Behind those walls, stage machinery stands still. Costumes hang in silence, and empty seats face a curtain that no longer needs to rise. You continue towards the museum building. Their matching forms face one another across a formal square. In daylight, they display imperial collections and carefully arranged knowledge. At night, they resemble two enormous sleeping guardians. Snow gathers on stone steps, lion figures, and decorative ledges. The dark windows reveal no paintings, coins, armour, or ancient objects, only your own blurred reflection when you pass near the glass. A night watchman moves beside one entrance. His coat is thick, his lantern small. He tests a door, then writes something in a notebook. Perhaps he records the hour. Perhaps he records that the door remains a door. Administration has a gift for preserving the obvious. A curious footnote concerns the Ringstrasse palaces built by wealthy bankers, merchants, and industrial families. Some owners adopted aristocratic architectural styles so enthusiastically that their homes contained more ceremonial rooms than practical ones. A household might possess a ballroom suitable for a royal reception while still struggling with drafts around the windows. The boulevard narrows in your perception as snow grows denser. Across the way, the Parliament building rises beneath statues and columns. Its classical design presents lawmaking as something ancient, balanced, and dignified. The reality inside can be less serene. Representatives from different regions and political groups often argue fiercely, sometimes speaking over one another until order becomes mostly theoretical. Tonight, those chambers are dark. Only a few windows glow in offices where clerks finish reports. Ink dries on papers discussing budgets, railways, taxes, and disputes that will resume when morning restores everyone's energy for disagreement. You pass the City Hall. Its tower disappears partly into the low winter sky. Decorative arches cast deep shadows, the square before it is almost empty. Apart from workers clearing paths through the snow, their shovels scrape stone in slow, steady strokes. One man pauses to straighten his back. Another stamps his boots and blows into his hands. The grand buildings depend upon such labour. Snow must be removed from ceremonial steps, lamps must be cleaned, doors must be unlocked, floors must be swept before officials arrive and begin speaking as though the city has prepared itself. The university stands farther along, its halls quiet behind heavy walls. Students who fill of its rooms by day have scattered toward rented rooms, taverns, and family apartments. Lecture notes lie closed. Chalk remains on blackboards. Professors sleep beneath blankets while their unfinished arguments wait patiently for daylight. Scholars remain divided on whether the Ringstrasse should be understood mainly as a triumph of liberal urban culture or as an imperial display designed to contain change within magnificent stone. Its museums and universities suggest education and public progress. Its ministries, barracks, and formal spaces also remind you who commands the city. Both meanings seem present beneath the snow. The boulevard welcomes movement, but it also directs it. It opens the city, yet surrounds the old centre with a new kind of boundary, one made from prestige rather than walls. You pass private residences with tall windows and elaborate balconies. Most curtains are drawn, a few rooms remain lit, revealing chandeliers, painted ceilings, and servants crossing saintly with lamps. Behind another facade, no light appears at all. The owners may be away, leaving furniture, portraits, and covered mirrors to occupy the rooms alone. A hired carriage waits near a hotel entrance. The driver sits hunched beneath blankets. Snow gathers on his shoulders and the crown of his hat. He does not move until a doorman appears with 2 guests and several cases. Then he climbs down, opens the door, secures the luggage, and returns to his seat with stiff movements. The passengers settle inside. The driver receives the weather. You cross near a public garden where trees stand black against the snow. Paths vanish beneath the white surface. Benches carry smooth cushions no one will use. Statues emerge from the darkness in fragments. A hand, a face, the shoulder of some honoured figure. A small animal darts beneath a hedge. For a moment, the city seems to belong to watchmen, drivers, labourers, and creatures that avoid official hours. The last restaurant near the boulevard closes its doors. Chairs are drawn inside. A waiter turns the sign and pulls down a blind. Light narrows to a thin line beneath the door, then disappears. You stand in the open space and listen. No applause remains, no public speeches disturb the air. The museums keep their treasures, Parliament keeps its disputes, the university keeps its questions, and the opera keeps its music. Snow settles across every roof and statue. The Ringstrasse, built to display motion, power, and confidence, becomes almost motionless beneath the winter night. Its grandeur remains, but without crowds it feels less like a stage and more like a dream made from stone. You walk on while the lamps continue their patient watch. You turn from the grand boulevard into streets where darkness does not mean rest. The city appears quieter now, but beneath that quiet, work continues with steady purpose. Lamps burn behind bakery windows, signals change in railway yards, hospital corridors remain awake. Watchmen cross courtyards with keys at their belts. Vienna sleeps only because thousands of people agree not to. A warm scent reaches you first. It comes from a bakery cellar where flour hangs in the air like pale dust. You descend a few steps and enter a room bright with firelight. The walls are warm. Wooden tables stand beneath rows of shaped loaves. Baskets rest on the floor, and a baker leans over a broad surface, pressing dough beneath both hands. His movements are strong and repeated. Fold, turn, press. Another man tends the oven. He opens the iron door, and heat rolls into the room with such force that winter seems briefly ridiculous. The baker slides loaves into the glowing chamber with a long wooden paddle. Each one disappears into the light. Records confirm that city bakers often begin work deep in the night so fresh bread can reach shops, breakfast tables by morning. Their labour follows the needs of everyone else's waking hours. When customers see neat rows of warm loaves at dawn, the difficult part has already happened in darkness. You stand near sacks of flour. The coarse cloth scratches beneath your fingers. A worker lifts one onto his shoulder, leaving a white mark across his shirt. He coughs once and carries it toward the mixing table. Flour settles in his hair, making him look older than he is. The men speak little. Their conversation comes in short remarks about heat, timing, and quantities. The work demands attention. Dough cannot be hurried by argument, and an oven has no respect for fatigue. Oddly enough, some bakers sleep in rooms close to the ovens because their hours make ordinary household schedules nearly impossible. The arrangement offers warmth, but also ensures that work is never far away. It is difficult to forget your occupation when the walls smell permanently of yeast. You leave the bakery and follow the distant clank of metal. The railway yard opens before you, broad and dim beneath falling snow. Tracks divide and cross like dark lines drawn across the ground. Lamps burn beside signals. Steam drifts around waiting engines, rising in thick clouds that briefly hide men, wagons, and platforms. A railway worker walks beside a row of carriages, tapping wheels with a hammer. Each strike produces a clear ringing note. He listens for changes in tone that may reveal damage. The task appears simple until you consider that lives may depend upon his hearing. Nearby, porters load crates beneath canvas covers. Parcels, letters, food, machinery parts, and luggage move through the station while most passengers sleep. A supervisor checks a list by the lantern light. Snow lands on the paper and melts into the ink. You hear a whistle. An engine answers with a deep release of steam. Its sound rolls through the yard and fades beneath the station roof. Men step away from the track. Couplings tighten. Wheels begin to move. The train departs slowly. Its lit windows pass one by one. Inside, a few travellers sleep upright beneath coats. Others stare into darkness, carried toward distant towns they will not see until morning. The railway connects the empire during hours when roads seem abandoned. You continue towards a hospital. The entrance is quieter than the station, but no less active. A porter admits a man supporting an injured companion. A nurse appears with a lamp and directs them along a corridor. Their footsteps echo across stone floors polished by years of use. Inside, the air smells of soap, wax, linen, and medicine. A nurse moves between beds, adjusting blankets and checking faces. Her shoes make almost no sound. One patient sleeps. Another watches the ceiling. A third whispers for water. She answers each request with calm patience. Night nursing requires attention without drama. Lamps must be kept low, fires must be maintained, medicines must be given at exact hours. Restless patients need reassurance, while dangerously quiet ones must be observed even more closely. A doctor enters from another ward. His collar is slightly crooked, and tiredness has settled around his eyes. He reads a note, asks several questions, and listens to a patient's breathing. Then he moves on, carrying responsibility from one room to the next. Debate continues among historians about how quickly modern hospital care improved everyday survival at the turn of the century. Medical knowledge is advancing, cleanliness receives greater attention, and trained nursing becomes more important, yet treatment remains uneven, and many patients still arrive too late or lack access entirely. The hospital clock marks another hour. No one applauds. A cleaner empties a basin. An attendant carries fresh linen. A nurse writes a few lines in a register. The building continues through careful acts that rarely enter official histories. Outside again, a watchman crosses an industrial courtyard. His lantern swings beside him. Keys knock softly against his coat. He checks doors, windows, storage rooms, and gates. At each stop, he pauses to listen. The city expects him to notice what should not be there. Smoke from an unsafe stove, a broken latch, a trespasser, a spark near stored timber, a sound from a workshop that should be empty. He opens one door and finds only darkness. Another reveals stacked crates and the smell of oil. At the final building, a cat slips past his boots and disappears beneath a wagon. The watchman mutters, then continues his round with the dignity of a man who has narrowly survived an ambush. You follow him toward a bridge below. Dark water moves slowly beneath patches of ice. A municipal worker checks a lamp along the roadway. He climbs a short ladder, cleans the glass, and adjusts the flame. The pool of light grows stronger. Such lamps guide late drivers, police patrols, doctors, and workers moving between shifts. Their glow seems natural only because someone tends it. Farther on, a printing shop trembles with mechanical noise. Inside, presses turn while men feed paper into them. Fresh sheets emerge carrying news that will be read over breakfast. Ink stains fingers and cuffs. Editors inspect columns under harsh light, making final corrections while the machines wait impatiently. A headline is changed, a date is checked. One misplaced letter is discovered and repaired before thousands of copies repeat it with perfect confidence. You feel how closely the sleeping city depends upon these unseen hours. Bread rises, trains move, patients are watched, lamps remain lit, newspapers take shape, gates are secured, fires are controlled. Night is not empty, it is crowded with labour performed beyond the windows of those who rest. You walk through the deepening snow as workers continue at ovens, platforms, wards, presses, and guarded doors. Their hands keep Vienna supplied, informed, protected, and alive. The city breathes softly because they do not stop. You enter a courtyard where the air is warmer than the street, though only because so many horses are breathing into it. Steam rises from their backs and nostrils. Lantern light catches the pale clouds, making each animal seem surrounded by its own weather. Snow has been trampled into dark slush beneath iron shoes, and the ground smells of straw, leather, hay, sweat, and damp wood. A stable hand leads a chestnut mare beneath an archway. He speaks to her softly, one hand resting against her neck. The mare lowers her head and steps with care. Ice clings to the edges of her shoes. Her flanks tremble from the cold, but her ears turn toward the man's voice. You follow them, The stable is dim and close, wooden stalls line both walls, harnesses hang from pegs, blankets are folded over rails. A bucket strikes the floor with a hollow knock as another worker sets it down. The horses shift in their stalls, one paws at the bedding, another chews steadily. A third raises its head and watches you with a dark, patient eye. Their size fills the room, yet their movements remain surprisingly delicate. Records confirm that horses still carry much of Vienna's urban transport in 1900. They pull private carriages, hired cabs, delivery wagons, refuse carts, and heavy commercial loads. The city depends upon muscle hidden beneath harness and leather. You stand beside a grey carriage horse. Salt has dried along the straps near its shoulders. The stable hand loosens the harness carefully, lifting each piece away from rubbed skin. He checks for swelling, cuts, and pressure marks. A damaged strap or poorly fitted collar can turn an ordinary shift into slow injury. The horse exhales. Its breath warms your hands for a moment. The worker removes the bit, and the animal moves its jaw with visible relief. Metal has been pressing between its teeth for hours. Now it reaches toward a bucket and drinks deeply, sending small ripples across the surface. A groom begins rubbing the animal with a coarse cloth. The sound is soft and regular. Moisture must be dried before the horse can rest. A wet coat in a cold stable can lead to illness, and a sick horse threatens not only the animal's life, but also the livelihood of everyone who depends upon it. You feel the rough fabric beneath your fingers. The groom works along the neck, shoulders, and back. Steam rises more strongly. The horse leans slightly into the pressure, accepting the care without gratitude or complaint. A curious footnote concerns winter blankets. Some owners buy thick coverings decorated with initials or company names, while poorer drivers improvise with patched wool and old sacking. Even horses display the social rank of those who possess them, though the animals themselves seem unimpressed by embroidery. A cab driver enters from the courtyard. His coat is stiff with cold. Snow rests in the seams of his hat. He removes his gloves and holds his hands near a small iron stove, flexing each finger. His horse has carried passengers through the city for most of the evening. Some customers were polite. Others expected speed on frozen roads while offering advice from a warm seat. The driver rubs his knees. Hours on an exposed box leave the body numb. Wind reaches the face, wrists, ankles, and every gap in clothing. The passengers complain about drafts inside the carriage. The driver quietly experiences the whole climate. He checks the day's earnings. Coins are counted twice. From this money must come food, stable fees, repairs, and perhaps payment to the owner of the carriage. A busy night does not always mean a profitable one. You hear a sharp scrape nearby. A farrier lifts a horse's hoof and examines the shoe. Snow and grit are packed into the grooves, and he cleans them with a small tool, then studies the iron edge for wear. Winter streets demand special care. Smooth shoes can slip on ice, roughened surfaces. Studs or sharpened points may improve grip, but they can also create strain. Every choice balances safety, cost, and the condition of the road. Scholars disagree over how humane urban horse labour truly was during this period. Some owners valued their animals carefully because replacement was expensive. Others worked horses beyond reasonable limits, especially when profit depended upon long hours and heavy loads. You can see both possibilities in the stay. One horse stands well fed, brushed, and warmly covered. Another shows the outline of ribs beneath its coat. A delivery gelding carries old scars along its shoulders. A young mare receives an apple from a groom who has saved it from his own meal. The city treats animals as property. The people closest to them often know them as personalities. A groom points toward the bay horse and says he dislikes bells. Another refuses to drink from certain buckets. One mare bites strangers but allows a particular stable boy to sleep against her stall when the night is bitter. Oddly enough, stable workers sometimes recognize approaching carriages by sound alone. Each horse has a rhythm, each wheel a particular squeak, and each driver a way of handling the reins. Long before the gate opens, they may know who is returning. You listen. A carriage rattles beyond the wall. One worker names the driver. A moment later, the gate swings inward, proving him correct. The incoming horses are tired. Their heads hang low. Snow has gathered along their manes. The driver guides them carefully into the courtyard, then climbs down with stiff legs. Harness is removed piece by piece. Leather buckles release with soft clicks. Chains lower, Shafts lift away from sweating sides. The horses step free and stand quietly while workers inspect them. One has a small cut near the knee. Warm water is brought, the wound is cleaned. The animal flinches once, then settles when a hand covers its cheek. You notice how gentle the stable becomes at this hour. Daytime work is noisy with wheels, shouting, traffic, urgency. Night care unfolds through touch. Hands rub cold ears, brushes move through tangled manes, blankets settle over broad backs. The horses begin to eat. Hay rustles between their teeth. Grain rattles into wooden troughs. The sound fills the stable with calm repetition. Outside, the empty carriages stand beneath snow. Without horses, they appear strangely helpless. Their polished bodies, lamps, cushions, and wheels can do nothing on their own. All their elegance depends upon living strength. A stable boy closes the final stall. He checks the latch, trims the lantern, and gathers a forkful of fresh straw. His shoulders sag with tiredness, but he stops to scratch one horse beneath the jaw. The animal closes its eyes. You remain in the warm darkness, while steam fades from their coats. The courtyard grows still. Leather stops creaking. Buckets settle. Hooves shift once, then rest. Vienna's traffic has withdrawn into Sonsor, and the animals that carry the city now stand beneath blankets, breathing slowly through the frozen night. You enter a neighborhood where narrow streets hold the quiet weight of migration, memory, ambition, and unease. Snow rests along window ledges and gathers in the folds of shop awnings. The buildings stand closer together, their lower floors occupied by tailors, booksellers, grocers, watchmakers, and small offices. Above them, families live in rooms that carry the scents of wax, wool, soup, paper, and damp winter clothing. A shopkeeper lowers a shutter with both hands. He pauses when the wood catches, lifts it slightly, then tries again. The metal clasp finally settles into place. His son waits beside him with a ring of keys, stamping his feet against the cold. Inside the shop, shelves are crowded with fabric, buttons, thread, and carefully folded garments. A small desk stands near the back, covered with invoices and customer measurements. The business is modest, but every object speaks of patience. Jewish life in Vienna in 1900 is varied and deeply woven into the city. Records confirm that tens of thousands of Jewish residents live in the capital, including families established for generations and newcomers from eastern regions of the empire. They work as merchants, physicians, lawyers, teachers, artists, labourers, clerks, and craftsmen. You follow the shopkeeper upstairs. His apartment is warmer than the street but cooler near the outer wall. A lamp burns on the table. His wife pours hot liquid into cups while two children complete their lessons. Their books lie open beside a bowl of apples, each page held flat by small hands. The father removes his coat and sits heavily. He speaks about a customer who delayed payment. His wife asks whether the landlord has sent another notice. The children listen while pretending not to. This household is neither wealthy nor desperate. It survives through work, thrift, education, and the hope that the next generation may climb more securely into city life. You hear the scratch of a pen. The older child copies a passage with intense concentration. Education carries special importance here. A degree, profession, or civil appointment may promise entry into circles that wealth alone cannot guarantee, yet entry is never simple. Vienna offers opportunity while preserving barriers. A brilliant student may win honours and still face prejudice. A successful physician may receive grateful patients and private insults. A family may speak the language of the city perfectly and still be treated as though belonging is temporary. A curious footnote appears in naming habits. Some families adjust spellings, first names, clothing, or manners to seem more fully Viennese, hoping that respectability will quiet suspicion. Society then praises them for fitting in while continuing to notice that they had to try. You move through another building. A narrow staircase leads to rooms occupied by recent arrivals from poorer provinces. Their luggage remains practical and worn. A wooden chest holds clothing, letters, tools, and small household objects carried across long distances. Family shares 2 rooms. The father repairs shoes near the window. His wife sorts vegetables at the table. A cousin sleeps behind a curtain, because rent is high and relatives are often the first shelter available to newcomers. Their speech carries traces of another region, and the city hears those traces immediately. Vienna can be impatient with people who arrive carrying rural habits, unfamiliar accents, or clothing that marks them as outsiders. New residents learn quickly that a capital measures difference with sharp eyes. A child watches snow through the glass. He has grown up in Vienna and feels no distance from it. The tram bells, schoolyards, bakeries, and crowded streets belong naturally to his world. Adults may argue about where his family comes from. He knows only where he is. You step into a physician's home in a more prosperous district. Books cover one wall, medical instruments rest inside a cabinet, framed certificates hang above a desk. Evidence of years spent studying, testing, and proving worth. The physician returns late from a patient visit. He places his bag on a chair and warms his hands near the stove. His wife asks whether the illness is serious. He answers carefully because servants are nearby and professional discretion must survive even domestic curiosity. He has achieved status through education and discipline. Patients seek his judgment. Colleagues respect his skill. Yet public success does not protect him from political hostility. Anti-Semitic rhetoric has become a powerful force in Vienna's public life. Politicians and newspapers exploit fear, resentment, and social change by blaming Jewish residents for problems ranging from finance to poverty to cultural decline. You feel the cruelty of that simplification. A population containing poor workers, wealthy professionals, strict traditionalists, secular intellectuals, shopkeepers, artists, and recent migrants is reduced by hostile voices to a single imagined enemy. No agreement has been reached on whether Jewish prosperity in Vienna should be understood mainly as evidence of social mobility or as a fragile achievement built under constant pressure. Both interpretations carry truth. Doors open through talent and education, yet those doors may remain guarded by prejudice. You continue toward a modest prayer room tucked behind an ordinary facade. The windows glow softly. Men arrive quietly, brushing snow from their coats. Some are elderly, others have come directly from shops or offices. Their faces show fatigue, concentration, and relief at entering a familiar space. The room is plain. Wooden benches stand beneath lamps. Coats hang near the entrance. A reader adjusts the pages before him. The gathering offers more than worship. It offers continuity inside a city that rewards change but can punish visible difference. Elsewhere, more assimilated families spend the evening at concerts, clubs, university lectures, or private dinners. Some maintain strong religious practice. Others identify mainly through family, culture, or shared experience. There is no single Jewish Vienna. That complexity is often ignored by those who prefer easy categories. You pass a cafe where several young writers remain at a corner table, speaking about literature and psychology. One believes art should break every old rule. Another believes rules are useful because breaking them then appears more impressive. Their notebooks are filled with ideas about dreams, identity, fear, memory, and modern life. Vienna at this moment is producing new ways of thinking about the mind, society, architecture, and art. Jewish intellectuals contribute greatly to that transformation, though their work is sometimes praised while their presence is questioned. A woman leaves a charitable association carrying a list of families needing coal, food, or clothing, Mutual aid organizations support newcomers, widows, apprentices, and the sick. Community life is held together not only by prominent names, but by people who keep records, collect coins, deliver parcels, and remember which householders stopped asking for help because embarrassment has become stronger than hunger. The woman pulls her scarf tighter. She crosses the street toward another doorway. Snow continues to fall upon elegant homes, crowded rooms, shops, schools, offices, and places of prayer. Behind each window lies a different negotiation between belonging and exclusion. You stand beneath a lamp and listen to the district settle. Keys turn in locks, pages close, a baby stirs, a pen is capped, a prayer ends. Somewhere, a young student continues reading long after the room grows cold. The city may question his place within it. He studies as though he intends to answer. You climb a narrow staircase toward a rented room where paint, paper, and restless thought have pushed ordinary furniture against the walls. The air smells of oil, turpentine, wet wool, and extinguished candle smoke. A canvas leans near the window. Sketches cover the table. Several books lie open face down, their spines strained by urgency. A small stove gives uncertain heat while snow gathers against the glass. A young painter stands beneath a hanging lamp. He studies a portrait that does not flatter its subject. The face on the canvas appears pale, tense, and almost uncomfortable beneath its fine clothing. Every line around the eyes has been preserved. The painter has not softened the mouth or brightened the skin. He seems less interested in elegance than in whatever unease elegance tries to hide. You move closer. Vienna at the turn of the century is becoming a centre of artistic rebellion. Records confirm that a group of painters, sculptors, and architects known as the Vienna Secession has rejected the control of the established art academy and created new spaces for modern work. Their aim is not simply to shock respectable people, though respectable people often prove remarkably easy to shock. The painter steps back, tilts his head, adds one thin stroke, and then wipes it away. Outside his room, the city prefers polished surfaces, formal portraits, heroic statues, and architecture that borrows authority from older ages. Inside, younger artists search for sharper lines, flatter patterns, private symbols, and bodies shown without comfortable disguise. You hear paper rustling in the next apartment. A writer sits at a desk with his coat still on. His room is too cold for vanity. He bends over a stack of pages, shaping a story about a clerk who fears his employer, his family, his own thoughts, and perhaps the entire modern world. The writer pauses. He listens to footsteps in the corridor, then writes them into the scene. Vienna offers endless material. Bureaucrats fear mistakes. Families guard appearances. Young people seek freedom while depending upon parental money. Patients describe dreams they would never mention at supper. Citizens bow politely, then publish furious essays under careful names. The city is elegant enough to provide contrast and anxious enough to provide plot. A curious footnote concerns the private habits of some writers who compose in cafes, rented rooms, hospital offices, or even while walking. One author may require silence, another noise, and a third only the certainty that someone nearby is wondering what he's writing. You leave the desk and enter an architect's studio. Large sheets are spread across a drafting table. Rulers, compasses, pencils, and measuring tools rest in neat rows. The drawings show a building with clean walls, practical rooms, and decoration restrained to a few deliberate details. The design looks almost severe beside the ornate facades outside. Its creator believes a modern city should not dress every structure like an aging duke. Buildings should serve the people who use them. Windows should admit light. Rooms should fit their purpose. Materials should be honest. This sounds sensible. It also sounds dangerously plain to anyone who has invested heavily in carved angels. Architects in Vienna argue over what modern life should look like. Some defend rich ornament and historical styles. Others seek simplicity, new materials, and forms suited to railways, apartment blocks, offices, and expanding commerce. Scholars remain divided on whether this artistic shift represents a true break with imperial culture or a new expression of the same wealthy society. Radical designs may challenge tradition, yet many depend upon patrons who enjoy rebellion most when it matches the curtains. You examine a drawing of a new apartment interior. The furniture follows clear lines. Patterns repeat across fabric and walls. Everyday objects are treated as part of a complete design. A chair, lamp, door handle, and drinking glass all belong to the same visual language. Beauty is no longer confined to paintings. It enters the room through everything the hand touches. Across the city, workshops produce metalwork, furniture, textiles, posters, books, and household objects shaped by modern design. Craftsmen cooperate with artists, wealthy clients order interiors that appear daring while remaining comfortable enough for long dinners. You feel rough wood beneath your fingers. The unfinished chair beside the drafting table has no gold leaf, no carved lion, and no unnecessary curve. It looks ready to be used rather than admired from a distance. A composer lives in another building nearby. He sits at a piano under weak light, testing a cluster of notes that refuses to settle into an easy melody. His hand strikes the keys, pauses, then repeats the passage more softly. The sound is uncertain and beautiful. Listeners trained on familiar harmonies may find such music unsettling. It does not always offer a clear path home. It circles tension, leaves questions open, and asks the ear to accept unease without immediate reward. You stand beside the piano. The composer closes his eyes and changes one note. Suddenly, the whole passage feels colder. That pleases him. Artists are not the only people examining hidden emotions. Physicians and thinkers are also studying dreams, memory, desire, fear, and the strange ways the mind protects itself. Private experience becomes a serious subject, not merely a weakness to be concealed. In consulting rooms, patients lie back and speak. In studios, painters study faces. In novels, characters doubt their own motives. In music, harmony begins to fracture. The same city that values ceremony becomes fascinated by what ceremony cannot control. You return to the painter's room. The portrait is nearly finished. The subject's hands rest tightly together. Her dress is richly patterned, but her expression suggests fatigue rather than triumph. Gold decoration surrounds her like a beautiful cage. The painter places his brush down. No applause follows. Modern art often begins quietly, in rented rooms, unfinished studios, cheap notebooks, and conversations that sound absurd until history learns to repeat them. Outside, snow presses against the window. A poster peels slightly from a wall. A manuscript dries beside an ink bottle. A model building stands beneath a cloth. Sheet music waits on the piano. The artists sleep poorly. Their work demands attention even when the lamps are lowered. Lines, phrases, rooms, and melodies continue arranging themselves behind closed eyes. You move through the dark studio while new forms gather in silence. The Empire still favours uniforms, titles, carved stone, and inherited rules, yet beneath its roofs, a different Vienna is taking shape through nervous hands and sleepless imagination. The future has not arrived. It is already being sketched. You stand beneath the government balcony while snow settles on the empty square and political voices seem to linger in the stone. The windows above are dark now, but during the day these rooms fill with speeches, petitions, reports, and carefully measured anger. Men argue over taxes, schools, voting rights, language, labour, and the future of an empire that contains too many hopes to satisfy easily. A gust moves loose snow across the pavement. It curls around the base of a statue, gathers against steps, and disappears beneath a closed doorway. The square looks peaceful, yet peace can be misleading. Beneath the quiet, Vienna carries rival loyalties, social fears, and ambitions sharpened by modern life. You hear the echo of a public meeting in a nearby hall. Wooden chairs stand in rows. A speaker has recently occupied the platform, raising one hand while promising justice, order, reform, or perhaps all three. The audience has departed, leaving damp footprints, tobacco smoke, and several discarded leaflets on the floor. You pick up one sheet. Its message is direct. Workers deserve better wages. Citizens deserve a stronger voice. The nation must be defended. The old system must change. Political printing thrives on certainty because doubt takes too much space. Records confirm that Vienna around 1900 is a centre of mass politics, expanded voting rights, growing newspapers, labour organisations, political parties, and public campaigns bring large numbers of people into civic life. Politics is no longer confined to court circles and wealthy gentlemen speaking softly after dinner. You move toward a workers' association room. A stove burns near the wall. Men and women sit around a long table, listening to a union organiser explain conditions in factories and workshops. He speaks about hours, injuries, wages, and the right to organise without punishment. His voice is calm. The listeners are not. A man describes losing work after challenging a supervisor. A woman speaks about pay that barely covers rent and food. Another worker asks whether a strike would help or merely bring hunger faster. No answer comes easily. The labour movement grows because industrial work brings many people together under the same pressures. Shared hardship can become shared purpose. Meetings, newspapers, benefit societies, and unions offer workers a language for demands that once remained private. You notice a collection box near the door. Coins inside may support an injured worker, a widow, or a family during a dispute. Solidarity sounds grand in speeches. In practice, it often begins with someone giving up part of a small wage. Across the city, conservative groups gather in different rooms. Shopkeepers complain about competition. Clerks fear losing status. Property owners warn that reform will produce disorder. Religious leaders worry about secular ideas. Nationalist speakers promise to protect one community by blaming another. Fear becomes a political resource. A leader who can name an enemy may gain followers more quickly than one who explains a budget. One peculiar aside concerns campaign processions. Supporters sometimes march with banners, brass bands, and carefully arranged symbols, turning political loyalty into street theatre. The music can be stirring, though it may also drown out the details of the actual programme, which is convenient for everyone involved. You enter a newspaper office where editors prepare tomorrow's arguments. Sheets lie across desks. Headlines are tested for force. A writer crosses out a mild phrase and replaces it with something more alarming. Calm reporting may inform readers, but outrage sells extra copies. The presses wait below. Political newspapers shape how citizens understand events. One paper praises the government, another condemns it. A third attacks both while claiming unusual independence. Readers often choose the publication that confirms what they already suspect, a habit modern life will not cure. You watch an editor sharpen a pencil. He studies a report from Parliament, then writes a paragraph describing chaos, betrayal, courage, or triumph. The same debate can support all four interpretations, depending upon the reader being courted. Arguments split sharply over whether mass politics strengthens democracy or deepens division. Broader participation gives workers and ordinary citizens greater influence. Yet parties also learn to mobilize resentment, ethnic hostility, and fear with disturbing skill. Vienna reveals both developments at once. A socialist speaker calls for social protection and political equality. A Christian social organizer appeals to small traders and lower middle-class voters. German nationalists demand stronger cultural dominance. Czech, Polish, Slovene, and other national movements seek recognition across the empire. Each group carries grievances. Each fears being ignored. The imperial government attempts to balance competing claims through law. negotiation, delay, and ceremony. Delay is especially popular because it gives every side time to become more irritated. You pass a police station. Inside, an officer reads reports about meetings and demonstrations and suspicious pamphlets. Authorities monitor political groups closely. Public order remains a sacred phrase, especially to those who define order as continued obedience. A file is opened, names are recorded, locations are noted. A speech may be described as inflammatory, even when the room was too cold for anyone to feel warm. Outside, a small group gathers beneath a lamp. They speak about language rights in schools and government offices. In a multilingual empire, language is never merely a tool. It can determine access, dignity, employment, and political power. A clerk who must work in an unfamiliar language may feel humiliated. A parent may fear children losing cultural identity. An official may treat one language as practical and another as inconvenient, without admitting that convenience often follows power. You walk through the square while distant bells mark the hour. The monarchy still appears strong. Soldiers guard buildings, officials issue decrees. The emperor remains a symbol of continuity, yet the political world beneath him has changed. Citizens read more. Workers organize. National movements expand. Parties learn to command crowds. Public life becomes louder, faster, and harder to control. You pause near a wall covered with posters. Some call for reform, others warn against it. One promises unity, another promises protection. A third announces a meeting that has already ended, leaving only paper, and fading confidence. Snow begins to cover the lower edges. The messages remain visible, but softened. For a moment, the city appears calm enough to believe every disagreement can wait until morning. Yet beneath closed windows, people continue planning speeches, counting supporters, drafting demands, and imagining different futures. Vienna sleeps under imperial symbols, but its politics do not rest. They gather quietly in meeting rooms, print shops, police files, workers' kitchens, and private conversations, waiting for daylight to make them loud again. You hear the first midnight bell before you see the tower. Its deep note rolls over the roofs, steady and full, then travels between stone walls until it becomes several softer echoes. Another bell answers from farther away, then another. For a few moments, Vienna seems just to speak through bronze, each district announcing the same hour in its own voice. You stand beneath a church facade where snow rests along carved ledges and gathers in the folds of statues. The doors are closed, the windows are dark, yet high above. Hidden gears continue turning with patient certainty. The bell sounds again, its vibration settles in your chest. Midnight in 1900 is measured by public clocks, church towers, railway timetables, factory whistles, household clocks, and the habits of those who listen for them. Records confirm that accurate public time has become increasingly important as rail travel, office work, and industrial schedules organize urban life with greater precision. You look toward a clock face glowing faintly above the street. The hands meet at 12. For many generations, local time followed the sun more loosely. Noon belonged to the moment when daylight reached its height. Modern transport and administration require stronger agreement. A train cannot leave according to personal interpretation, however poetic the passenger may feel. You continue through the sleeping district. A watchman calls the hour near an intersection. His voice is lower than the bells, but carries well in the still air. He walks slowly, striking the pavement with a staff. His duty include watching for fire, theft, broken doors, and anything else that should not be happening while respectable people are in bed. The snow makes his route easier to hear. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. And disappears around a corner and the city closes behind him. In a nearby apartment, a mechanical clock begins to strike. The sound is smaller and sharper than the tower bell. A woman wakes briefly, counts the notes without opening her eyes, and pulls the blanket higher. Her husband continues sleeping, which is either a gift or an achievement. A curious footnote concerns clocks that do not agree. One household may hear midnight from a church tower, then from a mantel clock 2 minutes later, then from a neighbour's clock several minutes after that. The hour arrives in stirs, giving everyone repeated opportunities to be late with increasing confidence. You pass a clockmaker's shop. Behind the shuttered window, rows of watches and clocks wait in darkness. Some are delicate, some plain, some made to display wealth through polished cases and elaborate faces. Others are practical tools for clerks, railway workers, officers, and merchants who cannot afford to lose time. Inside the rear room, a clockmaker has left a small lamp burning. He sits at a bench with a lens fixed over one eye, adjusting the movement of a pocket watch. Tiny gears rest on a cloth beside him. His fingers hold a tool so fine that one careless breath might disturb the whole arrangement. He listens closely. Tick. Pause. He adjusts a screw. Tick. 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 The rhythm pleases him. The modern city depends upon such tiny corrections. A few lost minutes can mean a missed tram, an angry employer, a delayed delivery, or a train watched from the wrong side of a closing gate. Yet midnight is not experienced equally for a wealthy sleeper. It is an unnoticed boundary between one date and another. For a factory worker, it may mark the middle of a shift. For a nurse, it may be time for medicine. For a porter, it may announce another guest returning late. For a mother beside a sick child, it may feel like proof that the night is refusing to move. You enter a dim room where a woman sits near a cradle. A candle burns on the table. The child has been restless with fever. A damp cloth rests beside a bowl. The mother places one hand against the small forehead and listens to the bells outside. 12 strokes. She counts them slowly. The final note fades. No miracle follows, but the child breathes more evenly, and that is enough to loosen her shoulders. In another building, students remain awake around a table covered with books. One reads aloud from a page while another scratches notes with a pen. Their landlord has complained about the light beneath the door, though not loudly enough to interrupt the argument. They disagree about philosophy. One insists that reason can explain society. Another insists that society has already proved otherwise. The third has fallen asleep with his hand beneath his cheek, contributing the most peaceful position in the room. Scholars continue to argue over whether the growing discipline of clock time improved urban life by creating order, or made it harsher by placing every hour under stricter control. Regular schedules support transport, trade, education, and public services. They also allow employers to measure lateness, productivity, and rest with unforgiving accuracy. You feel both sides in the silence. The clock protects appointments. It also commands them. A railway signalman checks his watch beneath a shelter near the tracks. A hospital nurse writes the hour beside a patient's name. A policeman records the time of an incident. A baker turns dough according to minutes learned through experience. Across Vienna, midnight becomes thousands of private instructions. Turn the lamp down, check the stove, begin the next shift, wake the patient, lock the gate, wait for the train. You approach a churchyard where snow covers the ground in smooth white shapes. Bare branches reach over the wall. The tower rises above you, dark except for the clock face. The bells no longer ring. Their absence feels almost physical. You hear smaller sounds now, snow sliding from a roof, a shutter moving in the wind, a distant wheel crossing frozen ruts, water ticking through a drain pipe. A dog barks once and decides against further discussion. The city enters its deepest stillness. Midnight is not true silence, but a thinning of noise until each sound gains importance. A cough behind glass becomes distinct. A footstep travels farther. The closing of a gate seems ceremonial. You pass beneath the tower. The hands move almost invisibly beyond 12. Time continues without announcement. The grand hour has passed. leaving no mark on the snow. The empire is one day older. Every sleeper, worker, patient, guard, and child has crossed into a new date without taking a single step. You listen as Vienna settles more deeply into the cold. The bells hold their silence. The clocks keep moving, and the night, having named its darkest hour, continues softly onward. You stand in a narrow bedroom where the door has been locked, the curtains drawn, and every respectable object has been placed exactly where it belongs. The bed is neatly made. A washstand holds a porcelain basin. A coat hangs from a wooden peg. A small mirror reflects the candle flame and the pale outline of a face that has not slept. The room looks orderly. The person inside does not feel orderly at all. A man sits on the edge of the mattress with both hands clasped between his knees. He is a clerk by day, punctual, careful, and almost invisible among ledgers and official papers. His employer considers him reliable. His neighbours consider him quiet. His family believes he is fortunate to have steady work. Tonight, his heart beats too quickly. He fears losing his position. He fears making an error that will be discovered tomorrow. He fears the rent due at the end of the month. He fears the cough that has lasted too long. He fears appearing afraid. You hear the faint rattle of a tram in the distance. The sound should be ordinary, yet he listens as though it carries news. Every footstep in the corridor seems to stop outside his door. Every creak of timber suggests a landlord, a doctor, or a messenger. Records confirm that Vienna in 1900 contains both impressive medical institutions and large numbers of people living with illness, poor housing, dangerous work, and limited access to care. Tuberculosis remains a major threat, especially where overcrowding, damp rooms, and weak nutrition leave bodies vulnerable. The clerk raises a handkerchief to his mouth. He studies it beneath the candle. There is no blood. Relief comes, but only briefly. Fear is inventive. When one possibility closes, it opens another. Across the courtyard, a woman lies awake beside her sleeping husband. She stares at the ceiling while snowlight glows faintly around the curtains. Her days are full of household duties, visits, expectations, and polite conversation. No one would call her life difficult in public. In private, she feels trapped by it. She has been taught to remain composed, gracious, and grateful. She must manage servants without seeming harsh, children without seeming tired, and marriage without admitting disappointment. Her worries do not disappear because her furniture is expensive. A peculiar footnote concerns the treatment of nervous complaints. Some doctors recommend rest, fresh air, mineral baths, strict routines, or long periods away from ordinary responsibilities. Others blame modern city life, education, ambition, family pressure, or the mysterious weakness of people who are expected to endure everything quietly. You enter a consulting room where a physician has left notes on a desk. The pages describe headaches, sleeplessness, trembling hands, sadness, exhaustion, and fears without obvious cause. Some patients are told their symptoms are physical. Others are told they are emotional. Many are told to rest by people who have never asked what makes rest impossible. The candle beside the notes has burned low. The room smells of paper, dust, and medicinal soap. No agreement has been reached on whether Vienna's growing interest in the hidden mind brought genuine understanding or simply gave new names to suffering that society still refused to confront. Some physicians listen more carefully than earlier generations. Others classify distress without changing the conditions that produce it. You move toward a poorer district. There, anxiety does not hide behind velvet curtains. It sits openly at the table. A widow counts coins beside a cold stove. 3 small piles represent rent, food, and fuel. None is large enough. She moves 1 coin from fuel to rent, then from rent to food, then back again. Her children sleep in the adjoining room. She has told them there will be bread in the morning. She does not yet know whether this is true. The city offers charitable aid, religious support, mutual societies, and public assistance, but help may be difficult to obtain. Applicants must explain their need, prove their respectability, wait in offices, and accept the judgment of strangers. Poverty becomes an examination. The widow folds the coins into a cloth and places them beneath a plate. Her hands rest on the table. For a moment, she does nothing. You hear water dripping from a pipe. The sound is slow and regular. In another building, a young servant lies awake beneath the roof. She fears dismissal because a glass broke during supper. She has not been accused, but she knows how quickly blame can travel. Her reference matters. Without it, finding another position may become difficult. Without wages, she cannot send money home. Without a room in the household, she may lose both work and shelter at once. She turns beneath the blanket. The mattress rustles with straw. A locked door can protect a household from the street, but it cannot protect anyone from dependence. You pass a room where an elderly man sleeps alone. His wife died several winters ago. His children live in other districts, busy with families and work. A neighbour brings him soup when she can, but tonight the room is silent. He wakes and calls his wife's name without thinking. The sound surprises him, and sits up, listens and remembers. Loneliness has no uniform. It appears in attic rooms, respectable apartments, servants' quarters, hospital beds, and grand houses where too many doors separate one person from another. A watch ticks beside him. He lies down again. Collars bicker over how much social isolation grew with modern urban life. Cities place thousands of people close together, yet closeness does not guarantee companionship. Crowded streets can intensify loneliness by offering constant evidence that other lives continue without you. You feel that truth as you move through the building. Behind one door, a couple argues in whispers. Behind another, a student worries about examinations. A mother listens to a child's breathing. A shopkeeper fears bankruptcy. A soldier remembers a distant home. A young woman wonders whether marriage will rescue her or simply change the shape of her confinement. The locked doors preserve appearances. From the corridor, each household seems calm. Lamps dim, voices lower, beds creak. No one announces fear through the keyhole. You touch the cold iron latch of a final room. Inside, a man kneels beside a trunk and reads an unpaid bill again. He folds it carefully, as though neatness might reduce the amount. Then he places it beneath a shirt and closes the lid. Tomorrow, he will dress well. He will greet neighbours. He will go to work. Respectability depends upon continuing the performance. The candle flame bends in a draught. Uncups one hand around it, waits for it to steady, then lowers the wick. Darkness enters slowly. Across Vienna, locked rooms hold private battles that leave no marks on the snow. Illness, debt, grief, fear, and loneliness settle beside sleeping bodies. Quiet enough to remain hidden, heavy enough to prevent rest. You remain in the silence while the city protects its secrets behind wood, iron, curtains, and careful manners. You step into an open square where the snowfall has thickened enough to erase sharp edges. Palace roofs, barracks walls, workshop chimneys, tenement windows, and railway sheds all carry the same pale covering. The city appears newly made. Dirt vanishes beneath white layers. Cracked stone looks smooth. Uneven streets seem level. For a few quiet hours, winter lends every district the same calm surface. You stand beneath a lamp and watch flakes cross the light. Each one turns briefly visible, then disappears into darkness. They settle on uniforms and patched coats, silk collars and woolen shawls, polished carriage tops and handcarts left beside walls. Snow does not ask who owns the building. It rests where gravity sends it. A palace courtyard lies silent beyond iron gates. The grand windows are dark except for one room where a servant crosses with a lamp. Marble steps have become soft white slopes. Statues wear snow along their shoulders and brows, giving imperial heroes the tired appearance of men who've been waiting outdoors too long. Across the city, a military barracks stands beneath the same weather. Soldiers sleep in rows of narrow beds, boots wait beneath wooden frames, greatcoats hang from pegs. A guard walks outside, tracing the same route again and again while snow fills each footprint behind him. Records confirm that compulsory military service brings men from many parts of the empire into shared barracks, where differences of region, class, language, and custom are forced into common routines. Uniforms create outward similarity, though homesickness and private identity remain untouched beneath the cloth. The sentry turns at the gate. His rifle rests against one shoulder. Ice gathers along his moustache. He looks towards the sleeping windows and then toward the empty road. A palace guard and a factory watchman may stand beneath very different symbols, but cold reaches both through the soles of their boots. You walk toward a workers' district. Rows of apartment buildings rise around courtyards where washing lines hang empty. Snow has settled on wooden railings, broken crates, and shared water pumps. Chimneys release thin streams of smoke. Some households burn enough fuel to keep every room comfortable. Others preserve one small island of heat around a stove. From the street, those differences are difficult to see. Every window carries frost. Every roof shines faintly. Every doorway holds a narrow ridge of snow. A wealthy visitor passing by might call the scene picturesque. A tenant carrying coal upstairs might choose another word. One curious footnote concerns the enthusiasm of city painters and photographers for snowy streets. Winter scenes offer soft light, dramatic contrast, and an appealing sense of stillness. The finished image rarely includes the numb fingers of the person holding the equipment. You cross a bridge above dark water. The snow outlines the railings and covers stacked goods near the bank. Warehouses stand beside modest dwellings. Barges rest in shadow. A dockworker checks ropes that have stiffened in the cold. His coat is patched at one elbow. Farther away, a hotel guest opens a curtain and admires the same snowfall from a heated room. The view belongs to both men. The comfort does not. Vienna's social divisions remain visible in wages, housing, food, education, medical care, and leisure. Yet winter briefly disguises the architecture of advantage as snow covers the private entrance and the service entrance with equal neatness. It softens the steps of churches, taverns, ministries, workshops, and shelters. You pass a row of shops. A jeweller's window is protected by heavy shutters. A cobbler's sign creaks nearby. A fashionable dressmaker and a second-hand clothing dealer occupy the same block, serving customers whose wardrobes tell very different stories. Snow gathers above both doors. Arguments continue among historians over whether shared urban experiences such as weather, transport, disease, and public celebration truly brought social classes closer together. Such moments create common sensations, but common sensation does not guarantee common understanding. A count may complain about delayed carriages. A labourer may lose a day's wages because the road is blocked. Both are inconvenienced. Only one is threatened. You move toward a public square where a group of children has discovered that snow has no respect for social theory. They roll a large ball across the ground. Their gloves are mismatched. Their cheeks are red. One child wears a good wool coat with bright buttons. Another has sleeves too short for his arms. For several minutes, they work together. The ball grows larger. Then they disagree about where to place it. The argument becomes intense, badly organized, and completely democratic. A nursemaid calls one child home. A mother calls another from an upstairs window. The group separates according to households, schedules, and authority. Their unfinished snow figure remains leaning in the square. You continue toward a charitable kitchen. Several people wait beneath an awning. Snow rests on hats and shoulders. A volunteer carries bowls from a steaming room. The line includes an elderly woman, a young man with an injured hand, and a mother holding a sleeping child. Across the street, a private dining room is being prepared for breakfast. Silver is polished. Fresh linen is laid. The same city contains hunger and abundance within sight of one another, separated by walls, custom, and the extraordinary human ability not to look across the road. You hear a shovel scrape stone. Municipal labourers clear a route through the square. They throw snow into piles, revealing black pavement beneath. The temporary equality begins to disappear. Parallel steps emerge first. Main roads open, important entrances receive attention. Smaller lanes wait, even snow removal follows priority. The men work steadily, bending and lifting while flakes continue to fall. Their task resembles an argument with the sky. One pauses beside the leanings and snow figure. He studies it, smiles faintly, and shovels around it. You enter a quieter lane where the storm remains undisturbed. Here, rooflines merge into one pale horizon. A grand house and a poor lodging stand side by side, their upper stories almost indistinguishable beneath the snow. Behind one wall, a woman sleeps under embroidered blankets. Behind the other, two sisters share a narrow bed and pull their coats over their feet. Both hear the wind. Both listen to timber creak. Both wake briefly when snow slides from the roof. Yet morning will return them to very different choices. The storm cannot cancel rent. It cannot improve wages. It cannot remove titles, prejudice, hunger, or inherited power. It can only hide their outlines for a little while. You stand at the centre of the lane as the snow deepens around your boots. The city looks peaceful enough to forgive itself. No carriage displays wealth when buried beneath white. No courtyard reveals poverty when seen only from above. No uniform appears commanding with snow dripping from its brim. Vienna becomes soft, quiet, and almost equal. Almost. Then a door opens. Warm light spills onto the street from one house. Across the way, another doorway remains dark. The snow continues falling between them. Impartial, beautiful, and powerless. You notice the darkness thinning almost imperceptibly above the eastern roofs. At first, nothing seems to change. Snow still covers the streets. Lamps still glow beside shuttered shops. Windows remain dark, and the sky holds the deep blue colour of a night reluctant to surrender. Then a chimney begins to smoke. Another follows. A pale line appears behind the buildings, faint as breath upon glass. Vienna has not awakened, but the first movements of morning have begun beneath its silence. A baker opens a side door and steps into the cold. Warm air follows him, carrying the scent of fresh bread across the street. He places several baskets onto a waiting cart, each one covered with cloth. The driver checks the wheels, adjusts his scarf, and clicks his tongue gently toward the horse. The cart begins to move. Its tracks cut through untouched snow, leaving two dark lines and a pattern of hoof prints. Before breakfast tables are set, bread is already travelling toward them. Records confirm that Vienna's daily food supply depends upon a complex network of markets, bakeries, dairies, railway deliveries, street vendors, and small neighbourhood shops. Morning begins not with sunlight alone, but with goods moving into place before customers arrive. You follow the cart toward a market square. Vendors are raising awnings and clearing snow from wooden stalls. Crates of vegetables appear beneath blankets. Baskets of eggs are carried with both hands. Milk containers clink softly as they are unloaded. A woman rubs frost from a scale. Her assistant arranges apples in careful rows, placing the brightest ones at the front. The bruised fruit remains behind, awaiting customers who value price more than appearance. Commerce wakes through small acts of presentation. A cabbage is turned. A cloth is shaken. A price card is straightened. A merchant may have slept badly, but the onions must still look confident. You hear the scrape of stiff brooms. Street sweepers move along the pavement, pushing fresh snow towards the gutters. Their coats are thick, their gloves worn. They work beside carts that will carry the piles away from important crossings. One man clears the entrance of a public office. Another opens a path toward a tram stop. A third pauses to watch a dog leap through a drift. then returns to work with the expression of someone who suspects the animal has misunderstood winter entirely. A curious footnote concerns the sale of hot drinks and simple foods to early workers. Vendors understand that cold labour creates quick hunger. A warm cup held between both hands may matter as much as the drink itself, especially when your workplace has no stove waiting for you. You approach a small stand where steam rises from a metal container. A railway porter buys something hot before beginning his shift. He drinks quickly, nods his thanks, and continues toward the station. A newspaper seller arrives moments later with a bundle tied in string. The first papers are opened. Headlines face the morning. Political disputes, theatre reviews, market prices, official notices, and reports from distant cities return the world to conversation. Yesterday's uncertainty has been printed overnight and now appears wonderfully organised. The seller calls out the news. His voice breaks the quiet more effectively than any bell. Curtains begin to move above the shops. A servant opens a window briefly, gasps at the cold, and closes it again. A child presses his face against another pane. A man in a nightshirt looks down at the street, remembers that neighbours possess eyes, and retreats with dignity. The sky grows lighter. Gas lamps appear weaker now, their yellow circles dissolving into grey daylight. One by one, they are extinguished or simply lose their authority. You pass a tram depot. Conductors and drivers prepare the first vehicles. Snow is brushed from steps. Metal fittings are checked. A bell sounds once during testing, sharp and cheerful into the cold air. Workers gather near the platform. Maids carry baskets. Clerks hold folded newspapers. Apprentices stamp their feet. A nurse returning from night duty stands among labourers beginning the day. Her face is tired, and theirs soon will be. The city brings different hours together at the same stop. Researchers remain divided over whether modernisation made urban mornings more efficient or simply demanded that people begin moving earlier and faster. Railways, trams, clocks, and organised deliveries improve connection, but they also tighten schedules around ordinary lives. You watch the conductor consult his watch. The tram departs exactly when expected. Several passengers run toward it exactly too late. The vehicle glides away while they stand in the snow, united briefly by disappointment. Near a school, a caretaker clears the entrance steps. Classrooms remain dark, but desks wait in orderly rows. Ink bottles will be opened. Lessons will begin. Children will arrive carrying books, lunches, excuses, and snow on their boots. A church door opens nearby. An elderly woman enters first. A worker removes his cap and follows. The interior receives them with stillness, wax scent, and cold stone. Elsewhere, factory gates begin to admit lines of employees. Workshop shutters rise. Kitchens relight their ranges. Office porters unlock heavy doors and placemats where wet boots will soon pass. Vienna returns through repetition. Coal is carried. Water is heated. Ledgers are opened. Horses are harnessed. Beds are made. The ordinary machinery of the city begins turning again. You walk toward a bridge as daylight reveals the river beneath the winter ski. Smoke rises above rooftops in hundreds of thin columns. Church towers, apartment blocks, government buildings, and factory chimneys emerge from the blue morning haze. The city looks less mysterious now. Snow shows marks from carts, boots, shovels, paws, and tram wheels. The perfect surface has become a record of movement. A palace window brightens. A tenement door opens. A delivery boy slips on the pavement, catches himself, looks around to see whether anyone noticed, and continues with dignity mostly intact. No single moment announces that Vienna is awake. The transformation happens through accumulation. One open shutter, one ringing bell, one smoking chimney, moving carriage, one voice calling from a market stall. The night releases the city gradually, allowing labour, appetite, responsibility, and ambition to return without ceremony. You pause as the first weak sunlight touches the upper stories. The lower streets remain blue with cold, but the rooftops begin to glow. Snow shines along ledges and towers. For a moment, Vienna appears suspended between dream and duty. Then another tram passes, a shopkeeper turns a key, a child laughs. Morning has arrived, and now, as the city brightens, you may let its streets drift farther away. The carts can continue without you. The bells may soften into distance, the market voices may fade until they are only gentle murmurs beyond a warm window. Think of the quiet detail that stayed with you most. Perhaps it was a horse breathing steam into the courtyard, a baker shaping bread beneath firelight, or a lonely lamp shining above the snow. Leave a comment and share the moment you enjoyed best, along with the place and time where you listened. There are more sleeping cities, forgotten households, and distant centuries waiting across this channel. Let the next story carry you gently onward whenever you are ready. For now, allow your breathing to slow, let the roofs become pale shapes, the lamps become tiny stars, and the footsteps disappear beneath falling snow. Rest deeply, the city is awake, so you no longer need to be. Blessings to you and your family.